Hi everyone, I'm Claire Stone and welcome to this episode of Angel Conversations. And I am super excited. Look who I've got on today, the one and only Mermaid Fairy Queen Karen Kay. Hi
Oh,
Karen.
hi Claire. Thank you so much for inviting me to chat with you. I'm super excited actually, yeah.
I am super excited for you to be here. So, for the watchers or listeners who don't know Karen, she is a fellow Hay House author. She has got an oracle deck which is messages from mermaids. And let's see the Oracle of the Fairies, Karen. Absolutely stunning decks. Karen she's a columnist for Soul and Spirit magazine. And how cool is this? She is also the founder, the chief executive editor of Fame magazine. Have you got a copy of that as well, Karen?
I have, yeah. I've always got one to hand usually somewhere.
Such a beautiful magazine, absolutely stunning. So, Karen, how long have you been interested in the fairies, the mermaids, the angels? Tell us a bit about your story, please.
Oh gosh. Well, there's a lot of story. I've been here a long time on this earth. And I think my interest definitely started in kind of um more supernatural things when I was at school. That's my kind of earliest conscious memory of it. But with fairies it started when I was a little girl, but it wasn't something I thought about. It just kind of happened naturally, because I was living with my grandmother. My parents separated and I went to live with my grandmother in Charlton in southeast London, and she loved flowers, and I just remember being with her and collecting up all the rose petals, because she would her garden was just amazing. And I mean, we're going back so many years now, moons and moons and moons ago, but I remember it, and the fragrances, and just when she would prune the flowers, all the petals would fall down from the roses and I would just collect them all and make, it was rose water, but I thought I was making perfume for the flower fairies, and I would leave it out every night, and well, most nights, and then the next day I'd go and check and it'd be gone. And I knew in my little innocent childlike heart that the fairies had taken it. And then I used to see them as little points of light as well. And again, it was completely natural. I didn't question it, because when we're that young we don't have any ego as such, so I didn't question it. It was just so natural, really.
Can I ask, does anyone in your family have the gift of sight or clairvoyance?
Um, it's interesting because my mum and my aunt both are interested in kind of spiritualism and things like that. My I'm not even sure what he was to me. I don't know if he was a cousin removed or something, but he used to hang out with my uncle in the same garden that I did before I was born. And his name is Walter De La Mare, and he's a really famous poet. He was a poet laureate, and he wrote about fairies, mermaids, and witches, and angels. And I never met him, but as soon as I'm even saying his name, I get this feeling. And he often comes in, and he's come in a few times over the last number of years, really. And he comes out through my music. It's just really weird. And someone said to me they thought that I was a reincarnation of him, which is plausible, I suppose. I'd never really thought that before. But he was really, if you ever get the chance to read any of his poetry, then do. And also De La Mare means of the sea, so I really connect with that. And that's my mother's maiden name, so I am of the sea, so it makes so much sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I just want to show the watchers that I got me special top on for interviewing Karen, mermaids. So, Karen, can I ask? I know you believe in mermaids, you communicate with fairies. Do you believe in angels?
Yes, and they believe in me too. And yeah, it's not something I'm known for, although I did, and this is a little fact that maybe you don't even know, lots of people don't know, I organised the UK's first angel conference in 1999. Yeah,
Wow!
Yeah, it's quite big, isn't it? And that was because I was told by Archangel Michael to organise it. And I often get these very bossy other beings, like the fairies are quite bossy and tell me what to do. And this was like, you must organise. And I was like, whoa, it was really like, yeah, but I did it. And it had to be around the time of the eclipse. There was a major eclipse in 1999. And yeah, so I organised that. So I hear angels telepathically. I see them as kind of orbs. And I know I've said I see fairies as lights, and it's different. Like fairy lights are very kind of darting around, and angelic lights, for me, when I perceive them, they're bigger and they're more pulsing and more glowing. So yeah, I definitely believe in angels, and they're a part of my everyday life as well as the angels, the fairies, the unicorns, the mermaids, everything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose Archangel Michael knew that you had the connections, you laid down the groundwork, hadn't you, for your like massive events and things that you create yourself. So you were the perfect person to launch that. That's so exciting. I mean, this is nowhere near as exciting, but I was the first person to host a mind, body, spirit fair in my hometown. And I hired the YWCA building because that's where I used to work. This would have been about 18 years ago, and it was in the newspaper, and the headline was "Spirit in the Y."
Love it. Love it, Claire.
Yeah. So could you tell us any differences between angels and fairies? So people who aren't as clairvoyant, I'm very, very visual. I mean, I see angels as people, but I always tell people to trust your own, what you see is always correct. If I see an angel with white wings and then you see it with turquoise wings, then that is okay. We're all different having these experiences. But in terms of, say, maybe personality or sensation, something you might feel, is there any subtle differences between fairies and angels?
There are subtle and also not so subtle, and I just want to digress really briefly, and I do apologize, I do this quite a lot, but you said you saw angels as people, and suddenly when you said that, it reminded me of a time when I saw an angel as a person. And I'll just tell the story briefly, but it just popped back, and I feel like, yeah, it was had quite a powerful impact on me. I was working in the customer services of a well-known supermarket, and this guy came up to me, and he looked different from all the other guys. He was an older guy, and he had a kind of a beigey trench coat on. And I don't know, there was just something about him. Anyway, he came up and he just asked for, I think it was cigarettes. And you might say, well, angels don't smoke. But if an angel wanted to connect with me, they would have had to have bought something from, I was working, customer service, cigarettes, all the rest of it. I don't endorse that, by the way, each to their own. But at the time, and we're going back so many years, and he came up and he ordered the cigarettes, and then he handed me his credit card. And on it, it said, and I'm not joking, it said capital A dot angel. And he didn't say anything. He just paid, he smiled, and then he walked away. And as I'm telling you again, I've got the whooshes and the tingles and everything. And when I went home that night, I did, because I worked as a researcher for TV as well before I kind of got into everything else, and I thought, right, I'm going to research this name, and I couldn't find one person with that name in our local area, and it wasn't a holiday season at the time. So yeah, I know that angel came to me in human form, because that was the way that he could get to me. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of put that little story out there because it's quite fun. But going to the subtle differences between fairies and angels, and not so subtle as well. So there's a lot of information out there. Some people say fairies are nature's angels. They're often referred to as that. But I just want to be really, really clear here. Angels are their own thing. Fairies are their own thing. So fairies and angels are not the same. They can, however, connect, and a really wonderful way that I did some research again on this with a guy called Brian Froud, who's a very well-known fairy artist, and he also was involved in designing the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth with David Bowie, so he's quite internationally well renowned. And we had a chat about this very subject, about, you know, fairies and angels and the connection, because he does some artwork in one of his oracle decks, and there's a group of fairies that are called singers, as in la, that type of singer. They're called singers, and they're just points of light. There's light everywhere. And we had a chat about this, and he said that that was almost like a combination of fairies transmuting into the angelic, and it's like they are, so fairies can transmute, they can ascend as well. And that is a really interesting thing. And why not? Because we can ascend, everything else can ascend. Why can't fairies ascend? And they can, and they do. So you get different kind of types of fairy energy, but fairies are primarily guardians of the land, of the earth, that they're kind of one and the same, really. So every single thing that grows in nature is connected with a fairy spirit. And when I use the word fairy, it's kind of like a generic term to cover all the different types: the elves, the gnomes, the pixies, and the sylphs, everything. But so there is this angelic connection. And actually in my Oracle of the Fairies deck, there's one card in there where there is an angel in there, and it's where the fairy is asking the angel for help, because even fairies have to ask angels for help sometimes too. So I hope that's answered your question a little bit.
You have answered quite a lot of questions that I was going to ask you in this interview. That is amazing, and it makes perfect sense, because like you said, we are each on our ascension journey. And I was only thinking about this after my meditation this morning, and I think in the West we're led to believe to some degree that the purpose of life is to attain spiritual enlightenment, and then it's like, and then that's it. But that's not it. We carry on this spiral. Who knows where we're going to end up? Who knows where we've already been? It's so fascinating, isn't it? But I really love that fairies call upon angels and ask angels to help them. What I've just thought about is, so I have spirit guides who mainly have incarnated as human. So when I say spirit, that's what I mean. And angel guides. I don't have any fairy guides. I have had fairy experiences, and I love fairies, and I've captured, you know, twinklies and things on pictures, and but I wondered, so how we have a relationship with a spirit guide, do you have that with a fairy? A fairy's like, do you perceive them as individuals, and do you have like a particular fairy who's like your little mate who you call in and, you know, tells you all the fairy secrets?
I love that. First of all, just when you said I don't have any fairy guides, I saw about 3 behind you. So, which was really funny. They just kind of flashed up in my mind, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I know that there's a fairy energy around you. They might not be, you might not consciously be working with them, but there's definitely some fairy energy there. Now, I don't have a go-to fairy. There's not a go-to fairy that comes and I'm like, oh yeah, hey, it's you. There is, over the years, I've just connected with so many fairies that it's just the right one or the right group will come in at a particular time. And sometimes I hear them as a very clear kind of telepathic voice. Sometimes when they come with a fragrance, and for me it's like toffee apples sometimes, which is really nice. And that's happened in the middle of the forest or the woods where I didn't have any toffee apples, and if I did, I would have eaten them, but I didn't have any. And it just brought back, and I was like, where is this fragrance coming from? I just didn't know. but it also came in with this feeling, this fizzy feeling, and that's what I get as well when the fairy energy is around. So they come in, they can, it's like a calling card, like, you know, when you're working with spirit, and they say, oh, if an ancestor comes through or a relative, if they wore lavender, then you'll get the smell of lavender, and that can come through. Is it clairsentience? I can't remember the smell, or I don't know what the name of it is, but there's a word for it.
Clairsalience.
Oh, okay. So there's, yeah, it shows how much I know, but you smell it, and that's sometimes how the fairies present to me, with this fragrance, this calling card, a feeling, and also visually sometimes I'll see them as like lights, as I've said before. So they'll come in, and they often will just, it's either first thing in the morning when I'm half asleep, in the middle of the night when I'm half asleep, late at night when I'm half asleep, but it always seems to be when I'm in this kind of in between stage of not quite like I'm here now, I'm like, yeah, I'm here, I'm awake, I'm, you know, and they're still there, I'm aware of the presence, but they come stronger when I'm not fully here. And that makes total sense as well, because you're more receptive when you're in those spaces. So yeah, as I said, I don't have a particular one, but I recognize them when they come, because they come in and I can feel the different energies, and it's almost like they come in with different purposes. And once you open to them, like once I've opened to them and opened that fairy door, metaphorically speaking, you can close it, but it's really hard to close it. So once that's open, that's it. And they're like, yay, a human that loves us, that loves the planet, that wants to help us. And then it's like ideas. I don't know if you see my kind of the work that I do, there's always something else happening. And I don't want to say it's all them, and it is partly me, because that's my passion too. I feel like it's a union, like a really good symbiotic relationship, really. Yeah.
Do you think that, I mean, I feel that this is true because I believe that anything is possible, but do you think that humans can incarnate as fairies and vice versa?
Yes, I do believe, I mean, I always say I am half fairy, half mermaid, half human. I know that's three halves, maths is not my forte, but it's like, if you go back into the legends and folklore and some history, you'll hear about the little people, like the little race, and this is where there were fairy folk, and there still are fairy folk. And sometimes you can look at someone, I mean, I can do this, I don't know whether you can, I feel like you can look at someone and think, you're not from round here, are you? Like you just feel like, I've seen people, for example, that look like they're from outer space, like straight up. And I'm thinking, how can no one else see this? It's like I just see it so clearly. I can see fairy races where people have got kind of genes, DNA of fae, of fairy within them, and it manifests in certain ways. And it isn't always physical. Sometimes it's just this feeling you get when you see someone. And so they can definitely manifest as humans or part human. They would never be fully human because they're fairy, and people that are human that have parts of fairy would never be, the other way around. I don't know, it gets so confusing. Like with fairy, it's kind of all inside out, back to front, upside down. It's not, there's no real rhyme or reason to it. But I hope that makes a little bit of sense anyway.
Yeah, I already knew the answer to that, because as I was, before I even asked it, I was like, well, Karen is clearly a fairy. But I just wanted to hear, out of interest, how you would answer that question. So can I ask, what kind of things, like, would you ask fairies to do things for you? Do they ask you to do things for them? Like, I've read before and heard before that fairies might, a little bit cheekily, well, if you want some help with that, go and pick up some rubbish, like an exchange, because they've got this personality like us, they have egos like us. Is that right, Karen? And could you shed a bit of light on an example of what a fairy might have asked you to do, and what you might ask them?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, actually, because sometimes people think fairies are like genies, you know, like you can make wishes with them, but it's like, oh yeah, they're just there. I can make a wish, they're going to make my wish come true. Well, yes and no, it does work two ways. And so, like you mentioned earlier, like if we want to have this connection with fairies, and remembering that their primary job, purpose in life is to be guardians of the land. That's what they literally incarnate for that. So that's their number one. The magical aspect of fairies is a byproduct. It's a bonus. It's like, it's just an extra bonus that is super amazing, and we can work with that when we form a friendship. So we can ask them, of course anyone can ask a fairy for anything, but if they want to do it, it's up to them. Like you said, they have egos that are similar to ours, and they're not like, whereas angels, they don't have that, they're kind of selfless, whereas fairies are more kind of conscious of their personalities, and therefore that you interact with them in a different way, which is why when you go into the woods, sometimes you might trip up on something invisible or get your skirt caught on a bramble or something like this, and it's just them having fun. And sometimes it's them saying, hey, you treat this space with respect, because very often humans don't respect the environment, and that is present company excluded, of course, but per se humanity doesn't really treat nature very well, cutting down trees, etc., etc. So to win the favor and the trust of fairies, we need to show them in a real practical way that we're not just talking it, we're walking our talk, in terms of, you know, there's just things we can do, like you said, picking up litter, caring for the environment, and also something that's really important, swapping out all these chemicals that we use in our gardens and in the house, and because it all ends up going back into the oceans and into the land, and this harms nature, it's harmful. So anything that you do, whether you're conscious or unconscious of it, and it's harming nature, is going to flag up in the fairies kind of energy, and they'll sense it, they'll know it, and so they'll kind of take a bit of a back seat. So if you want them to come forward and work with them, then it can happen quickly, but generally it's a slow progress. Like when you meet someone, for example, you get to know that person over a period of time, and it's very, I've found that personally anyway, that it's been like that with the fairies. Hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, you know, it must be pretty frustrating for the fairies with how humans were so obsessed with consumerism and wasting things. And they know, I mean, I know that indigenous tribes can sense the feelings of water. And there was something that I watched, and these tribes, I can't remember who they are, but they were really upset because they could feel the water crying. They said the water was crying, and fairies must be able to feel all of this as well. So I suppose that must be pretty frustrating. So they must be drawn to people who are interested in environmentalism and protecting the planet, you know, people who are green. That must be what they are drawn to.
Yeah, I mean, they do have other connections with people who might not be into that, but generally, is it because we can't really generalize about everything and everyone, but generally, if you're somebody who loves the environment, then that will put you on the radar of the fairies, and if they feel that you're open to them, then that's it. And like I said before, like once that fairy door of communication is open, it's like, yay, we found a human who's gonna actually take us seriously, and you know, and so that's it. That's why they don't care. I always say, is it, they care not for human time. Like time to them is just a concept that it doesn't mean anything to them. They don't care that we need to go to sleep and that we need to do these things. Like sometimes I have to say, stop, like just stop. I'm still going to be here tomorrow. It's just they get so excited that someone's receptive to their ideas and will actually follow through with it. And so they get they just kind of, yeah. So, and because they know that you've got the same love of the planet as them, and that is the biggest bond that you can really have with fairies.
Yeah, and spirit can be like that as well. They can get really excited. If this is why I always say to members of the Angel Mystery School the importance of closing down your psychic centers, because when you're practicing psychic work or mediumship, you can leave yourself wide open, and it's like you're shining a light, and you could just be out shopping, and then there could be a loved one of someone who's on the till and they're excited, oh, you can see me, you've got to tell them something. But you know, that's breaching spiritual law, isn't it? Like free will. It's not really ethical to just say, I've got a message for you, do you believe in this? So it's that thing with the boundaries again, isn't it? But I'm thinking now that I haven't actually asked you anything about mermaids. So my understanding is that fairies are the protectors of the element of earth. The mermaids are the protectors of the element of water. Could you tell us a little bit about the merfolk and their role?
Yeah, okay. So mermaids are, like you said, they're guardians of water, primarily the ocean, and there are other guardian beings. You know, there are water sprites and water fairies and MerFairies, and that's what I identify as. So, but that's what their primary job is to be guardians of the ocean. And it's much like, in a similar vein to when you're trying to kind of connect with the fairies. If you want to connect with the mermaids, then equally you will look at what you're putting into the ocean. Are you kind of, and also what you're eating, are you eating from the ocean? And mainly kind of animals and everything, and because things are overfished, the ocean is just used as a, well, you know, I don't really need to go into that. It's just not really respected, and then you get oil spills and all these pollutants that are happening, and people using it as a dumping ground, which it isn't. You know, it's the home to all these different types of aquatic life. And so if you want to connect in with mermaids, then that is something you really need to look at. And again, I know I might sound like a broken record, but like swapping out your household products, like your laundry liquid, your washing up liquid, for more environmentally friendly ones that biodegrade when they get into the ocean. That's really important. So I've never seen a mermaid in real life, so we'll just get that out of the way now. But I feel and see their energy, and I connect with their energy. So whenever, if I really need that connection, I will go to the sea. I'm very blessed to live very near to the sea, and I just put my feet in the water. And once you connect physically with it, it's very easy to connect to the spirits of the sea. And also Neptune shows up, King Neptune. He pops up every now and again, usually in meditations, but it's still that energy, and you can really just connect to it. And when you connect to one part of the ocean, you're actually connecting to all parts of the ocean, because water is a living thing as well, which is what you were saying earlier. And we do need to really look at our water, because water is life. We need water to live. So it's super important. I'm not saying we're drinking salt water, but ultimately there's a cycle of the water, a life cycle of water. You know, it goes up into the clouds, it rains, it goes through all these different experiences, and it's just an ongoing cycle, and we are a part of that too, and we need to really recognize our role in that. So mermaids work with emotions. They're really good for matters of the heart, matters of healing, of deep stuff that's going on an emotional level especially. You can also work with mermaids for manifesting, because we often see mermaids with, you know, they're guarding that treasure under the ocean, aren't they? They've got all the treasure, all the gold, so they know a thing or two about manifesting. But again, it's something you work up to. You wouldn't just like, oh, I want to meet a mermaid and I want to manifest £1 million or a mansion or a castle or whatever. I mean, you can, it might happen, but it's kind of unlikely that it will just be like that. Can't click my fingers, but you know what I mean. So it's like building up this rapport with the mermaids. And again, you're showing that you love the ocean and you care about it by your practical physical actions.
Well, I was going to ask you, which you've already answered. So I would say to people, if they wanted to connect to fairy, then naturally go outside, go in nature, go for a walk. And I was going to ask you, did you need to go to the sea or to some water to connect with the merfolk? But Helena, my spirit guide, she said, well, you could just bring a bowl of water inside and you can connect telepathically that way as well, which I'd never thought of. She's also showing me pearls. So there's crystals and stones and pearls and objects that you could use, shells, to make a connection. So no, you don't need to go and swim in the sea, although that would be really nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's a blessing. Like I said, I'm really blessed to be able to just go to the sea. But when I do my workshops and we're connecting with mermaids, then there's something very simple that anyone can do. You don't even have to leave your own home. All you need is a little bit of water and some salt. Those are the two ingredients. Now, I would always use moon water that's just been out under the moon. And ideally I use I use Himalayan pink salt. I don't know why, I just do. And then I take a special kind of vessel that I've got, special mermaid vessel, and I put in some water, my moon water, and then I sprinkle in some salt. And then I say, and I put it, as I'm mixing it up, I say, with water and salt to symbolize sea. And then I take a bit, pop it on my third eye. May mermaid wisdom reside within me. It's so simple and it works. You can instantly, you're opening up spiritually to that connection. You're creating the water, the sea water, by combining the two elements. And you don't even have to leave your own home. So you're totally right. Your spirit guide is totally right. Of course she is. You know, they don't get it wrong because they've got the overview, haven't they? So yeah, you don't have to go to the sea. As I said, I'm just blessed to be able to do that. But sometimes I don't want to go because it's raining or I can't get out because I'm busy. So I'll just do that with my moon water and my sea salt.
That's amazing. You know, so we've got the merfolk are the guardians of water. Would you say that they are they connected to the divine feminine in any way? Because we know the water represents the goddess. Well, the entire planet is feminine, in my belief, and probably yours. And, you know, the masculine is the sky or the sun, or however people perceive that. Do mermaids help you to delve into your own divine feminine?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. Yes, they do. And it reminds me when I first had my kind of conscious connection with mermaids when I moved to Cornwall. Can't even remember how, in my early 20s. And as soon as I got here, the ocean energy was like pulsing and calling me, and I was getting all these images in my mind of mermaids, but they were like warrior mermaids. They were warrior queens, and there were kings as well, but it was primarily women, like feminine energy. And they weren't like, you know, wishy-washy. They were fierce, and they had tridents, and they were sitting on thrones, and they were warriors, and I drew them. And I'm not an artist. Like, the extent of my art goes to matchstick people and blobs of color. Like, sometimes I'll just do blobs of color. So there's no form, but these were actual sketches, and it was just coming through me. And it went on for at least, I think, about 3 months, just drawing all of these different warriors and warrior mermaids, and drawing in every single scale in silver. And just, it was just, I was obsessed. Like, I just had to do it. And so that was a really strong, powerful, divine feminine energy coming through. Very often you know, the depictions of mermaids in the world are very often either they're like going to kill you and lure you to your death in demise in the ocean, or they're kind of so subservient and feminine and flapping around, and that's fine. Like, all of those things are fine, but the essence of the mermaid energy that I connect with is that they're fierce, divine, feminine forces, and there are males too, and those male mers have that balance of the divine feminine and masculine within them also. So yeah, definitely there is. And also we all have this divine within us, don't we? And that's the spark of life, isn't it? It's within us all, so it figures that it'll be within the mermaids too.
Yeah.
And also, just briefly going back to fairies and things that we're being taught, so there's a few things that people say, like you should never eat fairy food, like that's just a given, never eat fairy food. And yet there are RJ Stewart, who works with fairies, he says if a fairy offers you food, you accept that food because it's an honor to be offered food from the fairies. I mean, that's incredible. So it's a completely different school of thought, and personally that's what I believe. But I don't recommend, unless you want to go full on into fairyland. I mean, I've been doing it for more than 30 years, 35, I don't know, I've lost track. You lose track of time when you work with fairies. It's a full-time job, so don't do it lightly. Or do it lightly, but know that this is your career path for the rest of your earthly life, really. So you do have to take these things into consideration. But there are so many things. That's just an example. The other thing is, like, fairies don't like iron. And people are like, okay, fairies don't like iron. But why? Why don't they like iron? And so when you go back and you look at this, it's because church bells were made of iron, and the church demonized fairies. And I'm not against any religion. I'm not, you know, this is just a part of the history and how we've come to these beliefs about fairies and why they don't like certain things. You have fairy blacksmiths, like they make little horseshoes for their fairy horses. So they're okay with iron. It's just what that iron represents in the form of the bells, because they were, as I said, demonized. And it's so sad. They've had a negative PR, as have the mermaids as well, like taking sailors to their demise. But what about if they were comforting those sailors that had fallen off the boat, and they were comforting them and they were singing to them to make their last moments on earth more enjoyable? That could be the case, couldn't it? So we don't fully know everything, and as I say, I go by my experience with a lot of my with most of what I do. It's just from my own personal experience.
Yeah, well, I am a little superstitious with some fairy folk. I mean, my dad's family are Irish, so there's some little things like you never pick berries after Mayborn. You've got to save the berries for the birds and the fairies after the 21st of September. You know, just all these little things, and they're nice, they're magical, aren't they? They remind you of the magic in life, which us humans were living in a very masculine way, and always striving to get ahead and to analyse. And even just the questions that I'm asking you, I know it's masculine, it's a masculine way, but it's the way that we are programmed and the way that we need to understand things. But if we can let that drop and sink into our feminine a bit more, and, you know, just get into the rhythms of nature, and I think life, we could enjoy and savour the moments of life a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And that's why fairies are known for their joy as well, aren't they? Because it's in the now.
Yeah.
The ability to be in the now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to ask you an angel question here, because this is the angel conversation. What would a fairy ask an angel help for?
Whoa, well, it's like saying how long is a piece of string and how many grains of sand are on the beach. Like, it's like anything at all, because as you said, and we said earlier, like fairies have personalities, they have their own issues. So I feel like when they're approaching angelic, it's not for the little things, you know, it's more for like, help us to, how can we best serve the earth, how can we best get through to humanity, to make them really aware of what the earth needs and their impact and their relationship to the earth. Things like this, I think it's like the big asks, which obviously the angelic, the angels will be open to that, because they're guardians too of the whole of humanity, and so they want the best for all beings, and that does include the fairies too. So there is that connection, and some people might say, oh, don't be silly, it's not there, but I've experienced that through when I was doing my oracle deck and that particular card. And then I went into this whole kind of, it's hard to describe like what goes on telepathically when you're communicating, but it was all shown to me, and things that even I was like, oh really, I never even knew that, you know. So but it does, and it makes sense, like everything, animals, people, fairies, everyone has access to their guardian angels, and that's so lovely, because they're totally non-denominational as well, aren't they? So it's wonderful.
Do you think that everybody has a fairy guide or an elemental guide?
No, actually, my intuition is no on that. And it's not like I want one. And I feel like I was saying earlier, if you want to have that connection, they'll only kind of come forward. Some people have them. I know I'm jumping about all over the place, because as you said that, it popped into my mind. Somebody that didn't know that they had a fairy guide, they weren't even, they were interested in fairies, but as soon as I saw this person, I was like, you're a fairy person. Like, you just know, it's a feeling you get. And she said like, oh, I'm really interested in fairies, but I don't really and just went on, and I could see her fairy guides like with her, and I was like, you've got fairies with you? And she's like, oh really? And she was so happy, but I could just tell that she was a fairy person. So not everybody is aware that they have fairy guides with them. I mean, even you, well, not even you, but like you were saying, oh, you haven't got fairy guides, and 3 popped up and said, yes she has. So it's like, it's probably just because they haven't come, because you've got all your other host of guides and beings that you work with, so you know they're kind of on that periphery, but they're definitely there. So I feel like a lot of people have got them and don't know they've got them. Some people just don't have them because they have no interest, not in a horrible way, but it's just a lot of people live their lives with no connection to nature, with no kind of correlation between their impact on the environment, and no awareness of that. And it's not saying they're bad, it's just the way they are, the way they've been brought up, or whatever it is. And so the fairies won't necessarily come and be their guides, because it's like just knocking at a door forever and nobody's going to answer it. It's like, that's a waste of energy. They're going to go to the people that have got these open hearts and that love the planet. That's what I feel anyway.
Yeah, I just got a message because these fairies are actually communicating with me now. And it was like, we're too busy. If people aren't noticing us, then we've got other stuff to be doing. So I think people can always call in the fairies if they get interested in this kind of stuff. But it feels like that we know that everybody has a guardian angel and we have spirit guides, but the fairy guides and the elemental guides, it feels like it's more, if that's your path, if that will have a mutual benefit for the planet, for them realms, and for your life path, for what you're here to do, because we all have very different paths, don't we? And you know, mine is working with the angels to help people to awaken their spiritual path, and you're helping people to awaken on with different things, but still spiritual, but it's a different level of stuff, isn't it? And again, that the fact that I hadn't seen these fairy guides before is because all these beings are on different frequencies. And it's like animals and dogs, they can see things that we can't see. But the moment you draw your awareness to it, I think that everybody can polish their psychic skills to some degree. You know, these fairies are singing. They're singing that song, "We Are Family." They are literally singing that song. So I'm going to be checking in with these and see what's going on.
Oh, I love that. I feel like, yeah, that's gonna open up a whole new kind of other aspect to your work. It does. It can be. It's not for everyone, but I feel like it is for you. On some, you've got that kind of in you, definitely. And just because we're not aware of them, like I said, I think earlier, that they can still be there, but just waiting for you to kind of, not you, but one to come into that awareness, like tune in to that radio frequency, like we change the stations, don't we? And that's all it is. And they're here on earth, and it's just whether you want to, because we've got free will, and it's just been with me in such a natural way that it doesn't really feel like an option or a question. It's just what happens. It's just part of my life now, so I don't really question it. And it's fun, but it's not for everyone, because it is, if you want to kind of, this is my life, this is my path, I want this, like that, very organized, then it probably isn't for those people. And there's nothing wrong, we need all types of people, but people that might want a little bit more spontaneity in their lives, then it's definitely great to work with fairies. And it's a friendship you can, you don't have to, if you haven't got a guide, it doesn't mean you won't ever get one. It just means you forge this connection, this relationship, by your actions, as I spoke earlier, and little meditations, which I do. I've got them on my website, ways that you can kind of start that journey into connecting with the wonderful world of fairy, which is, obviously I love it because I've been doing it for so many years. So
Yay, so fascinating. And I just wanted to add in for the people listening that Archangel Ariel, the lioness of the goddess, she is the angel of the fairies, the merfolk, all the elementals. She is the archangel of that, because she's the protector of the animals, of nature, of everything on that angelic realm. And her name, it also, Ariel, as well as the lioness of the goddess, it also translates to hearth. And your hearth is like, it's your heart, it's the center of your home, it's the fire of your home. So I feel like she's the fire of the earth. She's trying to help us to create that, to bridge that gap, that this is all of our homes.
Yeah.
So, well, Karen, thank you so much. This has been such an exciting conversation. I could talk to you literally all day. Can you just tell everyone again where people can find out more about you? What do you offer? What courses have you got on?
Okay, so my website is karenkay.co.uk. That's a lot of K's in there. KarenKay.co.uk. I'm also on social media as Karen Kay Fairy, and that's the kind of traditional, not traditional, the common spelling of fairy. So it's Fairy, Karen Kay Fairy, and that's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. I do some private readings for people. I don't really have time to do loads, so I don't have a lot of slots, but I do have some, and again, that's on my website. I'm working on a couple of courses, a mermaid course and a fairy course, and I've got other projects that I'm working on that I can't share yet. I've got lots of meditations on my website as well. And if you join my newsletter at karenkay.co.uk, I'm currently giving away a free fairy door meditation, which is a very gentle introduction to working with fairies. So all you have to do is join the newsletter. It's totally free, and then you'll get sent a link with where you can download the meditation. And yeah, that's kind of it for now. Oh, obviously my Faye magazine, but I just, I'd literally be here all day like saying, oh, there's this and this and this, but basically I do daily videos on my Instagram as well, or daily inspirational posts about fairies and mermaids and unicorns as well. So Yeah.
Fab. And people can also get your cards from Hay House, also everywhere like Amazon, the usual places. So if people want to know more about mermaids and fairies, these are perfect ways to start building up those connections, because I always say to people who are learning angel communication, get a deck of angel cards, pull one card a day, and that will help you if your psychic gifts are not, you know, if you're not seeing things, you're not hearing the messages drop in, then these cards are a fantastic tool to boost those skills, aren't they, Karen?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And also, when you do get the cards, make sure that you're getting them from a kind of official source, because there are a few cards out there that are kind of fake cards. So you need to be careful that the place that you're getting them from is reliable. And also, I remembered, like, on my website, I actually sign decks if people want them signed, and I add a little magical little bonus gift with them as well. Some people want that personal touch, so that is an option as well, and that's the details are on my website. So
that is so beautiful. Karen, thanks again, and let's do this again soon.
yay, definitely. Thank you,
All right,
Claire.
thanks everyone for listening. Bye.